Welcome back to the deep dive. You know how we do it? We gather up a whole stack of research notes, sometimes mainstream stuff, sometimes things really pushing the boundaries, and we pull out the key insights, make it all, digestible for you. Okay, let's unpack this one. Today we're doing a really fascinating deep dive. We're looking into the nature of healing itself, but going way beyond just the usual physical treatments. We're stepping into the realm of consciousness and, well, the body's own built-in intelligence. Our journey today is guided by explorations stemming from Dr. Deepak Chopra's work. Now, he's an endocrinologist, interestingly trained in both Western medicine and the ancient Indian science of Ayurveda. So our mission is pretty focused. How does the mind, consciousness, act like a blueprint? How does it directly affect healing? Or maybe even create disease patterns right down at the cellular level? We'll touch on principles linked to quantum physics, look at some compelling case studies. It's quite a trip.
Yeah, and it's so important because, look, Western medicine is brilliant with acute problems, setting bones, fighting infections, transplants, you name it. But it sometimes hits a wall, doesn't it? With chronic diseases, or maybe even more interestingly, with cases of spontaneous healing.
You mean spontaneous remissions?
Exactly. Those really rare, complete turnarounds in diseases like cancer. They happen.
Right. And doctors, well, they rely heavily on statistics, naturally. So if
Yeah.
something happens, say, fewer than 10 times in a million cancer cases, which is one estimate, it often gets filed under anomaly, too rare to really study systematically.
But you have to wonder, if we truly want to understand health, can we afford to ignore the possibility that the body already knows how to completely heal itself?
That tension between the statistical norm and these radical healings really brings us to a core idea in the source material, which is that Western science often sees the body like a sculpture, fixed material, eventually wearing down.
But the physiological reality, according to these sources, is much more dynamic. It's less like a sculpture and more like a flowing river.
A river. How so?
Well, think about the sheer turnover of materials in your body, which seems so solid. Get this, 98% of the atoms in your body weren't there a year ago. They're completely new.
98%.
In 1 year.
Every single year. And your skeleton feels permanent, right?
Yeah.
It's totally replaced every 3 months.
3 months, wow.
Skin renews every month. And inside, it's even faster.
Faster how?
The stomach lining the surface cells, dealing with all that acid and digestion, they renew every 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
And the entire lining itself is replaced roughly every 4 days.
That's staggering. So if the body is constantly dissolving and reforming minute by minute,
Then the really critical question becomes, what's the master plan? What's the constant instruction set telling these new cells how to form, where to go, what to do?
it can't just be the physical material itself
Yeah.
if that's always changing. Exactly. And if the instructions aren't purely material, then relying only on material fixes, like drugs, starts to look, well, inherently limited. The sources use the example of diuretics for high blood pressure. It illustrates this perfectly.
Okay, how does that work?
Well, the drug's goal is simple: reduce fluid tension. And it does that, but it acts almost like an obsessed chemical. It only knows one command. It doesn't have the body's overall systemic wisdom.
Ah, so that's where the side effects come in.
Precisely. Dizziness, dehydration, electrolyte imbalances. The drug is just executing its one physical command everywhere, blindly. It can't tell the difference between a blood vessel that needs relaxing and, say, a kidney that needs its balance maintained.
It's like using a sledgehammer when you need a scalpel, almost. Local physics trying to solve a system-wide intelligence problem.
Right, which strongly suggests the real intelligence, the wisdom, has to reside within the system itself.
Down at the cellular level.
That's the idea. Intelligence here means know-how. And it's not just in the brain. It's apparently present in every cell. Think of a white blood cell rushing to a cut. It knows exactly where to go, what to do, how to fight infection. Spontaneously. No conscious thought involved from us.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Moving beyond the purely material explanation. We understand Newtonian physics, right?
Yeah.
Billiard ball, A hits B, B moves. Simple cause and effect.
Linear.
Predictable. But when a non-material thought like stress causes a material change like adrenaline surging, there's a step missing in that simple A to B model.
Right. It's more like thought A goes to something, which then leads to molecule B.
That something, that's the mystery, the gap.
That's what the sources call it, the gap. It's that invisible instantaneous transformation point where information pattern turns into matter we can observe.
And bridging that gap requires understanding the body differently.
Yes. That's why neuroscientist Dr. Candace Pert talked about the body-mind. Not separate body and mind, but one integrated system.
An integrated information network.
Exactly. And the messengers in this network, primarily neuropeptides and neurotransmitters. These are the molecules carrying the information.
So they're like the memos flying around the body's organization.
You could put it that way. And crucially, thinking isn't just happening upstairs in the brain's electrical circuits. Thinking is practicing brain chemistry, producing these messengers.
And these messengers aren't just local.
Not at all. That's what's fascinating. Molecules we used to associate strictly with one organ, like insulin with the pancreas, are also produced by the brain. And brain chemicals, like CCK or transferrin, are also made by the stomach.
So the brain, the gut, the immune system, they're all speaking the same chemical language, instantly linking thought to the body.
It appears so. A single, integrated network of information.
The evidence for this non-material influence, this informational control, is pretty compelling, though controversial, like the Benveniste experiment.
Ah, yes, the IgE experiment. That one really challenged the purely molecular view.
Can you walk us through that briefly?
Sure. Researchers took a solution containing an anti-allergy antibody, IgE, and they diluted it, and diluted it again and again. They diluted so many times, way past the point where, statistically, any molecules of the original antibody could possibly remain. It was essentially just water, chemically inert.
Just water. But then
They introduced this empty water to basophils, the immune cells, involved in allergic reactions. And the basophils still reacted. They triggered an allergic response.
wow, so the cells weren't reacting to a chemical because there wasn't one.
Apparently not. It seems they were reacting to the memory, the informational imprint or phantom of the molecule that used to be there.
That points directly to something non-local, informational, almost like a quantum pattern being the active ingredient, not just the physical substance.
It certainly suggests that. And this isn't just in lab dishes. We see profound examples in psychology, too. The sources mention a case study of a patient, Timmy, with multiple personality disorder. Timmy had severe allergic hives. But here's the thing. Depending on which personality was dominant, the hives could completely disappear. Instantly.
Just by switching personality.
Just by switching. It was as if the body was receiving a totally new set of instructions from the controlling consciousness, overriding the physical allergic tendency.
Proving the body was, in a way, choosing to be allergic at a level below conscious awareness, based on the memory or pattern associated with the specific personality.
It strongly implies that, yes, the physical manifestation was secondary to the informational state.
This really highlights the difference in approach, doesn't it, between standard Western research and, say, the ancient wisdom traditions like Ayurveda?
It does. Western science tends to focus on the horizontal axis, mapping out those clearer material cause and effect links. A causes B.
More and more detailed maps of the physical territory.
Right. Whereas the Vedic tradition, coming from the ancient rishis, emphasizes the vertical axis, diving inward.
Into consciousness itself.
Into deeper, quieter states of consciousness, believed to be the very source from which the physical world arises. That's seen as the way to access that gap we talked about.
And this isn't just philosophy. They talk about specific states.
Yes, like Turiya, the fourth state. Beyond waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, it's been studied physiologically too, sometimes described as hypometabolic wakefulness.
Hypometabolic wakefulness. What does that mean in practice?
It means the body achieves incredibly deep rest, much lower oxygen consumption, slower heart rate, deeper than normal sleep. But the mind stays fully alert, fully aware.
So deep rest without losing consciousness.
Exactly. And studies, like those by Robert Keith Wallace, showed experienced meditators could reach this state in just minutes, a level of rest that might take others 6 hours of sleep to achieve.
And accessing this state, this control room, has measurable physical effects.
Apparently so. Wallace's studies on aging, for instance, found that long-term meditators often had biological markers significantly younger than their actual chronological age.
Younger biologically? How much younger?
Well, the results varied, but in some cases, dramatically so. The sources mention one woman testing biologically 20 years younger than her birth certificate showed.
20 years. That implies we might have some influence over the aging process through consciousness.
It suggests the body's blueprint isn't as fixed as we assume. It reinforces that old Vedic saying, what you see, you become.
Meaning, our perception shapes our reality, even our physical reality.
It seems to. Think about that classic experiment with kittens. Kittens raised seeing only vertical stripes. Well, their brains adapted.
They couldn't see horizontal lines anymore.
Their brains literally lost the neurological pathways to perceive them. Their physical structure molded itself to their limited experience, their limited seeing.
So if our experience and awareness shape our physical structure, how does this reframe disease?
Well, from this perspective, major diseases might not be just physical breakdowns. They could be seen as failures of intelligence, or maybe persistent, distorted ghosts of memory etched onto the blueprint.
Like addiction.
Addiction is a good example. The physical dependence might pass relatively quickly as cells are replaced. But the urge, the craving, persists long after. Why?
Because the memory of the addiction, the pattern, is hooked into that deeper, non-material blueprint.
That's the idea. And cancer, viewed this way, isn't necessarily an external enemy invading. It could be seen as a kind of corrupted information.
A mistake in the blueprint.
A set of wrong instructions, a distorted pattern in the DNA's information that keeps getting copied into the new cells as the body rebuilds itself. The body is essentially following faulty instructions.
Okay, so if consciousness is the control room, and disease is like a glitch in the blueprint's memory, how do we actually get in there and fix it? How do we bridge that gap?
The Ayurvedic approaches mentioned in the sources focus on guiding awareness back to that underlying field of silence, or bliss. That's considered the body's natural, healthy state.
Are there specific techniques mentioned?
Two are highlighted. One is the bliss technique. It's practiced during meditation.
How does it work?
You actively pay attention to the subtle feelings that arise with deep silence. Maybe warmth, tingling, a sense of ease. It's about consciously registering that afterglow of quietness.
Kind of training the mind to recognize the feeling of wholeness.
Exactly. Creating a positive feedback loop, reinforcing the healthy state.
And the other technique?
It's called primordial sound. This is described as more focused. It's not just general chanting.
What's the intention there?
The intention is to bring the awareness of that field of bliss, that coherence, directly to an area affected by disease.
So, targeting the problematic blueprint.
In a sense, it's less about fighting the disorder and more about guiding the disrupted DNA, that faulty sequence, back into harmony.
How would sound do that?
Well, if you think of DNA as an incredibly complex sequence, like a sutra of vibration or information, if that sequence gets garbled, the primordial sound technique is intended to, let's say, resonate the correct pattern, apply the right frequency or awareness directly to the disruption point.
Like reminding the cell of its original perfect instructions.
That's the essence of it, aiming to spontaneously correct the mistake in the information field.
Which brings us to a pretty profound conclusion, doesn't it?
It really does. The idea is that healing isn't something we have to force. It's the body's natural default state. And conflict, like the war on cancer metaphor, might actually be counterproductive if the issue is fundamentally a breakdown in self-recognition DNA staging a drama against itself.
So quantum healing in this context isn't some kind of magic.
Not necessarily. It's framed as the innate ability of one aspect of consciousness, the deep intelligence of the mind, to spontaneously correct errors in another aspect of consciousness, the physical body's informational blueprint.
It's simply a return to normalcy, showing that the physical body constantly follows the lead of the information field.
Precisely. The matter follows the map.
So what does this all mean? For you, listening right now, I think the biggest takeaway is the shift in self-perception. You're not just a fixed sculpture slowly wearing out. You're more like that intelligent, constantly flowing river. And consciousness, that's the control room where the master blueprint resides and gets updated.
Which means true mastery over health might involve learning to navigate that invisible realm of intelligence, not just managing the visible world of matter.
It's a very different approach.
And it leaves us with a really provocative final thought to ponder. We talked about the gap, that invisible boundary between mind and matter. The sources describe it almost like a one-way door for our usual way of thinking, our analytical intellect. We can't just think our way across it or force change through willpower alone.
Right, thinking about it doesn't seem to be enough to change the blueprint directly.
So, if intellectual thinking can't easily cross that gap from mind to deep cellular memory, the question these wisdom traditions pose is, what is the other way? What's the non-linear, non-intellectual method that can cross that divide and allow for spontaneous correction of the body's deepest instructions?
The answer presumably lies somewhere in accessing those deeper states of awareness we discussed.
That's certainly what's implied.
A fascinating question to sit with. And that brings us to the end of this particular deep dive into consciousness and the body's control room. Until next time, keep exploring the source of your own innate intelligence.